All right, welcome in. We got college basketball on our mind here, the Jimmy V Classic. We got a couple of other interesting matchups here. Some top 25 teams, including the new number one, going to be in action here tonight on this limited card. It is exam week, of course, around the country in colleges, so not nearly as many games as we've had over the last couple of weeks, but still some games worth taking a look at and betting on nonetheless. And we're going to do that today, of course, with two of the best at WagerTalk as we get the one and only Brian Leonard in the house, ready to roll here. And Adam, Trigger, locked, loaded, no doubt, ready to roll here on a college basketball Tuesday. And gentlemen, we'll pick apart a couple of these games here, Wisconsin, Illinois, Michigan, Arkansas, and we'll start with Miami taking on Tennessee, the brand new number one team in the AP. Tennessee, after Kansas decided not to lose one, but two games within 5 days last week. That didn't work out well for them. But Miami, I don't know what's the word, Brian, sucks on a whole lot of levels here, and it's kind of infuriating given the talent that they've got on this team, but Jim Larinaga just can't get these guys to play together. Now they're at the Garden taking on Barnes in Tennessee. I don't know. I mean, I'm shocked the number's not 20, Brian. How about you in this game? Uh-oh. Oh, he's muted, though. Or maybe the cat's muted.
Yeah, I got my cat's going nuts.
You go.
He just loves Joe's voice. So as soon as Joe starts talking, the cat starts going wild.
Yeah.
He's got that effect on let's just say
on a lot of the okay. I was gonna say I know a few chicks who have that issue, but yes, Brian, your point. Go ahead.
All right. But we're gonna take a look at this Miami Tennessee game. I like the favorite here. You mentioned the terrible start for the Hurricanes, who dropped 6 straight heading into this contest. They have 6 defeats. They still haven't played a true road game. This is a team that's really struggling right now. The 3 wins have been against number 338 Fairleigh Dickinson, 313 Binghamton, and 326 Coppin State. They are at a massive disadvantage defensively in this contest. They rank 230th in the nation, while Tennessee ranks number 2. Zakai Ziegler leads this talented Volunteers squad with an 8.76 Bayesian power rating. That's one of the most dominant players in the college game. In fact, Tennessee has 6 players all rated higher than anyone playing for the Hurricanes. Tennessee is a perfect 8-0 on the year while cashing 7 straight games. They're averaging 1.13 kill shots per game. That's a net 1.13 kill shots a game. And a kill shot is basically anytime you have a 10 or more point run for a team, that's considered a kill shot. And they're getting 1.13 of those, more than they allow each game. This Tennessee's defense is so good here. It's hard to see Miami denting the scoreboard very often here. 15, 14 and a half, whatever it is now, it seems cheap. I made it 17. I'm playing Tennessee.
I'd love to say I can argue with you. You know, I love my Canes, Trig, but I don't blame anybody laying it with what we have seen from this very uncharacteristic Larinaga team. They run no offense that I have seen in games. It's basically a bunch of dudes playing hero ball here. There's no effort on the defensive side. They went 4 of 26 from 3 in that game against Clemson. It feels like this is going to be a similar kind of game. I've already played the under in this at 145 and a half. How do you see this going? Is there any hope for Miami in this one?
Well, I'll start by saying I'm going to talk about Miami because, Brian, I agree with it. Not only did I also make the number 17, but I agree with everything you said about Tennessee. So I'll talk about Miami, the Miami side, and why I think it's reasonable to go against them here. So, Joe, they are, if you remember, last year we're in the Bahamas, and Miami Twitter had a problem with me talking bad about Miami when they were 5-0 after they beat Kansas State. And they are exactly the same team I said they were last year. They're really, if you go back to the year that they made it to the Final Four, they were still a 5 seed. They still did a lot of the same things that they're doing this year. You actually kind of nailed it, calling it hero ball. That's exactly what they played 2 years ago, except they had heroes on that team. Isaiah Wong and Jordan Miller made everything. They made every shot they took. It didn't matter if it was a bad shot, a contested shot. They made everything. And so I think you look at that team 2 years ago, and Miami's still kind of, maybe, their profile is inflated because of that. I hate to say it, but Jim Larinaga probably needs to retire. I just don't think at this point he's an effective coach. Like, I'll give you a recent example. You go into the half down 8 to Charleston Southern and make 0 adjustments, and to lose that game on your home floor is just so unacceptable. It's like they're not totally outclassed by Tennessee here in so many ways that they should lose this game by 20. But it's very concerning that they don't, they don't make adjustments. Like, listen, you lose an MTE and you lose to teams like Oklahoma State, Drake, VCU, that's fine. You lose to Arkansas, that's fine. Clemson, that's fine. Those are decent basketball teams. You would think that you would maybe luck your way into a win if they're all in consecutive games. But, so it's not that Miami can't play. I mean, some of their numbers are decent, 48.9% from the field. They don't turn the ball over. They shoot free throws well. So, they do, some of the numbers sort of make you say, okay, well, they should be able to hang around. The problem is they do nothing well as a team. They do absolutely nothing well as a unit. They don't move the ball. Their team rebounding is atrocious outside the top 250. They don't move the ball. They have a coaching staff that doesn't make adjustments. Larinaga is probably 80 at this point? He probably just needs to hang it up. And because that's the biggest point here. Miami is poorly coached, and you can't play Tennessee by being a poorly coached team is not gonna have a chance against a team like Tennessee. Could they hit some shots and lose this game by 12? Yeah, that's a possibility. That's why I'm not going to lay 14.5. But everything Brian said tracks here, in my opinion, as far as the Tennessee side is concerned. And there's no question, now, because the market has decided it was too many points, you're getting a bargain at 14.5 on Tennessee. So I have this one landing somewhere in the 12 to a million range, because Tennessee winning by 30 wouldn't surprise me either. So I've got to lean toward Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, Trig, Miami, 13 assists a game. What in the hell kind of team basketball is 13 assists a game? That's not going to get it done. And if Nigel Pack, who can't stay healthy, even he can't seem to hit water if he fell out of the boat. And we made this big thing about the kid, Lynn Kidd, that came over, and we thought this guy was going to be dominating on inside in the paint. They can't get him the ball. They got a 7-footer on the court, and they don't include him in the offense.
And some of that has to do, we see this every year, and when it works, it's great, but when it doesn't work, when you go to the mid-majors to build your power conference team, you're really playing with fire. I know Lynn Kidd comes from Virginia Tech, but a lot of these guards that Miami went out and got are from places like Samford, East Carolina, Stetson. I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple of the other ones. The point is, it can go south quickly when you have a bunch of guys that are now being asked to step up and play top tier competition. And credit Miami, that's kind of what they've done. It's not they won their cupcake games. The Charleston Southern abomination is a whole nother thing, but it's not like they're playing bad teams. Drake is a good team.
No.
Oklahoma State's a good team. VCU's a good team. Clemson and Arkansas are good basketball teams. So they're getting exposed against good teams, and now they're playing an elite team. Tennessee's as good as it gets. So that's why I'm leaning toward the Vols with Brian here.
Yeah, and you also have two teams that are not in a rush to score any points in transition, apparently. So both adjusted tempos in about the mid to upper 200s. Miami team total under, game under. I just find a million different ways to fade Miami in this game here. We got another game, interestingly enough, in the Big Ten with Wisconsin and Illinois. A lot of guys in the chat room, and shout out to Titan CT, Eric D, Bill Sandoval hanging out with us here live today, guys. Don't forget to give that thumbs up there. Hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. And Bry, it's an interesting battle here. Wisconsin seemed to be rolling. Well, until the last couple of games, and now they're not rolling anymore. Mostly because they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. They had some shooting struggles there the last couple of games. Illinois, young team. We thought it was going to take a little while to kind of put it all together. And, well, what do we think? Do we trust Illinois here to lay this kind of number? Or do we think Wisconsin's got a shot of not only staying within a number, but maybe even winning it outright?
That should be a good, typical Big Ten physical game. Badgers shot out of the gate with a perfect 8-0 record, as you mentioned, before dropping back-to-back contests to Michigan and Marquette. That latter game was the first true road contest for Wisconsin this season. Now they head to Illinois to face a 6-2 Illini, who are also off a losing effort. They lost to Northwestern 70-66 last time out. Both teams have solid depth here, but Illinois has shown a really strong home court, one of the strongest in the nation right now. The host has been excellent defensively, ranking 16th in the nation, while both of these offenses are actually in the top 30, although Wisconsin's looked a whole lot better before these last two games. Unfortunately, I made this line right on this number at 6.5. So with a nice card of college basketball today, there's no reason for me to force anything. So I'm going to pass on this one. But I think we learn a little bit out of these two games if you're watching this one for the future.
Another one of these games where, unlike Miami and Tennessee, where both are not in a hurry as far as pace goes, Trig, Illinois going to run. Wisconsin going to be much happier to slow this game down, which I think would be in their benefit to do so. But do you like or trust either one of these teams here to stay or win by the margin?
No, and it's funny because I also make it 6.5, and that's not a cop out. Like this is just the big time games on the card. That's going to happen a lot of times. You're not going to see odds makers make a ton of mistakes on the side. So I'm good with that number, and I'm not even going to try to sway you one way or the other. That being said, Joe, you make a good point. True tempo, Evermaya has true tempo rank for Wisconsin, 212th. And I think if you start to dig into their offensive metrics, you can tell that their offense is very efficiency based when it comes to having offensive success. Now, they've had a great deal of it this year. To start the season. I didn't have Wisconsin being even close to this good, but it's because they've been really efficient. 85.5% from the free throw line. That's number one in the country. They don't turn the ball over. They get good shots and they make them for the most part on offense. Granted, you have to look at that over the full body of work. They're probably not getting those types of shots against Illinois, who's a top 20 defensive team nationally. So I do lean toward this going under because I think Wisconsin might be able to impose their pace on Illinois a little bit here. But what I don't think they're going to be able to do is convert at the rate that they're converting. Like I said, I've got Illinois as a top 20 team nationally defensively. So I do think they're going to have some tougher shots here. But, if they're not playing, if this is not an efficient game, tell me how this is getting to 150 points. I mean, yeah, that's the type of total that I expect to see, just, I guess, a better it makes sense from the standpoint that both of these teams are highly rated offensively. But if this is the night where stuff isn't falling for Wisconsin or they're not getting the same looks because Illinois can take some of those looks away, what you're left with is two teams that are very solid defensively battling it out. And I don't know how they battle it out to the tune of 150 plus points. So I'm going to lean toward the under here. Again, I just don't bet a ton of totals. I feel like I say that, and then it's 95 to 92 somehow. Every shot goes in. But listen, the under makes sense here. It's to me.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I mean, both teams coming off a loss. I believe Illinois coming off one. Brad Underwood's teams at Illinois have usually done a pretty good job of bouncing back after one, especially at home. So The number is that high. It's that high for a reason. And you mentioned it, Trig. You're talking about a team that shoots the free throw better than any team in the country in Wisconsin, but you got a Illinois team that doesn't send people to the line very often. So something's got to give in this one, right? So something's got to give in this one. It's a Big Ten battle. I know Big Daddy's got a lot of Wisconsin backers in that chat room, which worries me because I ain't seeing anybody putting Illinois down, Brian Leonard, which means, oh boy, we might be screwed here. Last game up, we'll break down. How about this Michigan game versus Arkansas? Another fun one, especially. I mean, listen, Dustin May, loved him here at FAU. He brought a lot of transfers over, completely remade roster at Michigan, completely remade roster at Arkansas, right? So with Calipari, he brought a whole bunch of guys over as well. Interesting enough, his former star player there, John L., is now on Arkansas. Used to be with FAU when they made that run there for Dusty May. Two very well-coached teams, a lot of talent on the court here. How do you look at this one?
Yeah, you made a nice comment when you talked about quality programs off of a loss. I look for that a lot. And if you can go through and see how coaches have done on other teams in their careers, and most of the time it follows back to back to back. If it's a good coach, no matter where he's playing, if he's good off of a loss, he's good off of a loss. We've had a lot of success, I guess, on this show. At least I have, discussing these Michigan games. I think I've on them a lot lately, and they're 8-1 on the season. The lone loss coming in the neutral court game against Wake Forest. I believe it was their second game, and they lost that one by a bucket. They've won and covered 7 straight as of late, and they're off 2 very tight wins over rivals Wisconsin and Iowa that went down to the wire, and they got the victories in both of those. Arkansas 7-2. Their losses have been to Baylor and Illinois on neutral sites, 2 very good basketball teams. But the Razorbacks have only cashed 2 spreads all season. They have not worked out well for their followers. They've really struggled when they stepped up in class. They're 0-3 on the year when they haven't been a favorite or 13 or more points. They're good, decently well against bad teams, but when they have to step up in class, they've been pretty bad all season long. I prefer the proven Wolverines, but the number, I made it 5.5. So the most I would lay here is 4. There's 4s and 4.5s there right now. If you like the Michigan side, maybe lay the 4. I wouldn't lay anything more than that.
We watched him at FAU there, Trig, and now he's kind of taken that philosophy and the style of players. He brought Golden over with him, too. He's got this kid, Wolf, I believe, from the Ivy League, who's an absolute beast as well. And just like that, they're already elite defensively, Michigan. Arkansas, ironically enough, speaking of changes, they have not lost a second half yet in any game. So they tend to start slow, Calipari adjusts, and in the second half they show up and show out. Don't know if they'll be able to go down that much against this Michigan defense, but what do you think we're going to get tonight?
So this is one where, my number likes Arkansas almost enough to bet. But the problem is I like Michigan. And when I say that, I like the upside that Dusty May and Danny Wolf and Vlad Golden have on this Michigan team, to the point where, Joe, if they can figure out the turnover issues and stop turning it over 15 to 20 times a game, I don't think you're going to want to be on the other side of this team. So that makes it difficult, because right now they haven't fully figured that out. When their offense is good, it's really good. I mean, the pick and roll stuff that May can do with Danny Wolf and some of the other guys on that team represents tremendous upside. But the problem is they still turn the ball over, and they're going to be up against a very athletic Arkansas team that has some size, that definitely has athletes, that's very good defensively. I mean, I think Arkansas is very solid defensively, and that hasn't really been fully healthy yet this year. So you almost have to give Arkansas a little bit of an upside bump to the fact that they've had to deal with some injuries so far. I'm not going to lay 4.5, or I'm not going to lay 4 or whatever it is against them on a neutral court. So that's why it's no bet for me. I was very, I really I can make a really good case for Arkansas. I feel like being like incredible value at 4.5 on a neutral in this game. But I believe in May and what he's doing too much to want to bet against it. So a pretty strong lean toward Arkansas at the number. But I just personal preference, I guess, not trying to pick Michigan right now.
Yep, another one there at the Jimmy V Classic in New York. And you've got, you mentioned it, 15 turnovers a game is what Michigan is averaging. Brian, you got Arkansas averaging 12. If my math's correct, we've got a lot of free points here in this game. If we're going to keep turning the ball over, it feels like, and I think it's a pretty decently high number, if I'm not mistaken here, with the total. But if we keep getting turnovers like this, boy, that feels like getting an over is it might be worth a look in this game here as well.
Quite possibly. I don't know if we did mention that this game and the Tennessee game are both being played in Madison Square Garden. That's where the neutral site is. So we will see these teams, a combination of these teams play again. But yeah, you're right. The turnovers are tough because depending on how fast you can get out, we see it a lot of times that a team will turn the ball over a lot, but they're not able to get easy baskets at the other end. So we'll have to see how this game works out in that way. Yeah, just turnovers don't always mean easy scores, because if you're at the other team's basket, you turn it over. That's the score that you didn't get down on that side of the court. So, yeah, I've got nothing on the total. I very much like Trig. I don't do a lot of things totals, but I kind of like the side here if we can lay 4 or less.
You like it if you can lay 4 or less and see what happens come tip-off. Again, that'll be the later game there, 9 o'clock Eastern time at Madison Square Garden, 146. Actually, Eric D showing 147.5 is what they're seeing the total at now. So it is getting bet up here, but I love that Michigan defense and how Dusty May's got him. And Jonell Davis, by the way, is the former FAU stud that played with Golden at Florida Atlantic under Dusty May. He is now with Calipari, and I believe the wrist is healed. So he should be in line for a pretty big night at the Garden, because, Trig, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that where FAU made the run? Wasn't it at the Garden, I think, in the I'm pretty sure it was FAU at Madison Square.
It was, because
it was, right?
Kelly in Vegas was in the building for those games.
Yes,
it was.
That's right. Yep.
Between you and Kelly, you're in the building at just about every sporting event anymore, I'll tell you.
Oh, you have no idea. Yeah. They are everywhere here. Everywhere. We do have a few other games and some questions coming in here, guys, that we'll get to on some of these other games. But those are the 3 big games tonight here. Of course, not as many games as usual. It is exam week, holidays at the schools and everything else. So
I disagree, Joe. I think there's a bunch of great, this is like a pretty solid Tuesday, mid-December slate. I mean, Rutgers, Penn
volume,
State.
Trick, not quantity, not quality. Quantity, not quality. I never said quality.
Yeah. I was going to say quality. There's some Cornell Cal's interesting. Brown, Rhode Island. There's some pretty good ones tonight.
And we got, as a fact, Bill knew you were going to say that there, because he wants to know what the hell do we do with Cornell in this one here, and whether or not against Cal they might be. It's a big number against this. What are we thinking here? You're a big Cornell guy, Trig. What are you thinking this year? Totally different roster, coach, and everything else, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a weird one, because the number's pretty juiced up. I mean, 9 is outrageous. Like, you can't be laying 9 with Cal in this game. But it's a tough spot for Cornell. They've been on. So I'm not sure what I mean, they probably just scheduled this game because it's like, if you can get a game against Cal and you're a team like Cornell, it's something that you probably should do. The problem is they've now played 3 games on the road in 6 days and have to they couldn't piggyback this with another game. So they're basically just flying out to Cal for this game and then coming back. But this, with that being said, 9 is crazy. And, this Cornell team, I was worried that Brian Earl, who now coaches William and Mary, with Steve Merrill's William and Mary tribe, benefit greatly from getting Brian Earl. I was worried because he runs such a complex system that Cornell would drop off a little bit this year. But the assistant that took the job over, it looks like the same Cornell team from last year. So I've actually kind of upgraded them a little bit from where I had them early in the season, because I feel like I'm just watching last year's Cornell team, which I thought was pretty good. That being said, it's a tough spot. So I haven't jumped in with the 9. I probably won't, but it's certainly the way I'm looking here. That is, even at 7, I thought it was big. And now it's 9. Unless Cornell has big time injury concerns, which I don't think they do, or I certainly haven't heard of yet, you have to like Cornell a little bit at that number.
So interesting, Brian, by the way, big shout out there to the guys. Keith Landry in the house. Good to see you as well. Eric D in there. Peter Morocco 7 also joining us on Instagram. Don't forget to hit that like button, guys. Hit that subscribe button as well if you haven't done so already. We certainly appreciate you hanging with us here, as we do have some interesting games on a lighter slate here tonight. And Brian, one of the other big games, and it's we're staring at Big Ten left and right, and that's Penn State taking on Rutgers, I believe, in what has now become a pick'em game. And I don't know, is this perception versus reality? The reality is Rutgers has got, 2 guys that are going to be top 10 picks in the NBA draft, but they're 5-4. And then you got Penn State, who just thoroughly beat the living crap out of Purdue, and now everyone's all high on Penn State. I don't know. Is it a, sell high, buy low spot here? Maybe on Rutgers at what used to be called the Rack. I don't know if it is that anymore. Trig would know that. But are you convinced
Jersey
with this
Mike
Penn
Serena
State team? Oh, Jersey Mike. Sorry, it's still the Rack then, as far as I'm concerned. Those sandwiches suck. What do you think, Brian?
Well, before I get to this one, I do want to touch on that California Cornell game.
Yes,
I'm in agreement with Trig on this one. This line opened 6.5, and I'm seeing upwards of 10 now. And I think it's all because of the spot. But when you take a look at these teams, Cal's not any more deeper than Cornell is. They don't have a lot of depth. Cal's home court is one of the weakest, at least in my power ratings, in college basketball. And when you take a look at the teams overall, from the ranking standpoint, they're within 10 spots of each other. I can't find any injuries on Cornell that I've looked at so far. I like the Cornell side. I think it's just too high. So I think they've just overblown the spot situation. Sure. That's a consideration, but don't you think the lines makers knew that when they put out the original line? So I'm not a big buyer in that. I'll take the points in that one. The Rutgers Penn State game is really similar to what my line's about, the way the current line is right here. I think overall Penn State's the deeper team. They've got the best player in Adrian Baldwin. But do I trust them on the road to win at Rutgers? And Rutgers is a decent team itself, and they've got a pretty good home court advantage when you take a look at their numbers. Evan Maya rates them; they've got them at a 4.64 home advantage, and that's pretty good. That's about a point more than the league average. So they like Rutgers at home. And when you take a look at Penn State, from a tempo rank, they want to run. Rutgers also wants to run. So anytime you get 2 teams who want to run, usually the team that's better dictates the pace. And I think Penn State's a little bit better, but it's just not enough to make me play this game. I'm just not seeing an advantage from a point spread situation.
So what do you think, Trig, in this one? Harper and Bailey here are, they've got NBA aspirations here. They just have not Doesn't look like they've put it together yet at Rutgers here, but I do think there's going to come a time, right, where we should be able to benefit and back those two guys, especially since they started the season, 5-4 here, and everyone seems to be high on Penn State now. Are you high on Penn State? You like them to go on the road and win this? Because it opened up a damn near pickup.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised that Penn State. Let me pull that game up for a second, though. I was surprised that Penn State was favored against Purdue the other night. But again, I mean, they made the odds makers look very smart there. That being said, I think you're going to see that with Purdue a little bit. Like, this is now a Purdue team that doesn't. It still functions similar to the one last year, except they don't have like the bailout guy, right? Zach Edey just get into the line and kind of like being able to bail them out when they're not shooting the three well. That being said, like I'm not like Rutgers, I think has a chance to trend in the right direction. But I don't. I could have had this. Like, what did you say the number is now, Joe? Sorry, what's it up to?
3.5.
Yeah, like I
it's
would
been
play
all
back
Rutgers.
at that.
Yeah, it's been all Rutgers.
I could only play back at that because this kind of is similar to like what we were discussing a little bit with Cornell and stuff. I think you've got people betting this up because of the spot and the perceived advantage that Rutgers has at home, which they definitely have a home court advantage, but I don't think it's, I don't know. I feel like that advantage is really like gets full marks when like a Purdue comes to town or one of these like really huge names. Purdue is the one that comes to mind because they're the one that's gone in there and struggled the last couple of years. So I think Penn State, I had a slight favorite here. At this point, like, am I going to turn around and bet Penn State just because I can get 2.5 or 3? No. But that's the way I would lean, just because I don't think Rutgers, despite the caliber of player that Ace Baldwin and Harper are, I just don't think I'm sorry, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper.
Bailey, right?
I don't think they're there.
Yeah.
I just don't think they're there as a team yet. And so for that reason, I'm going to pump the brakes on Rutgers, but I'm not a big enough believer in Penn State to want to go play them in a true road game at the Rack. So that's kind of what kept me off there.
Yeah, losses to Ohio State, Texas A&M, and Bama, the last 3 out for Rutgers. Not exactly, not embarrassing losses by any stretch, but they'll be at home here tonight looking for a little revenge against Penn State. Brian, what do you do when you get a team like, the Big 12's monster in Houston taking on a Sun Belt team in Troy? We see this all the time with Houston, right? The totals are ridiculously low. They blow them out in the first half. The game they suffocate them in the second half. Troy ends up with 40 points. Houston wins and covers. It's usually always a big number. But my goodness, it's just like, what do you do with a team like Houston here, who usually handles business early and often against these lesser teams?
Yeah, a lot of times what I'll do is, in fact, on my best bet, I'll talk about that a little bit later, but most of the times you have to take a look at what these teams have done in the past. If it's a team that doesn't blow out the opposition very often, when they are a big favorite, that's something you can learn from. If they are coming off a big blowout win and they don't normally do, that's the time I'm usually trying to fade those teams. You mentioned Houston off the big victory, but if you take a look at Houston so far this year, they've been worse against good teams and better against bad teams. So they've been a very good bully, and you could bully Troy here. Troy's not a bad team. They've got about a 125 ranking in college basketball, not bad at all. They're pretty deep. They go about 6 deep. But you take a look at this Houston team, they're one of the most deepest teams in college basketball. You've got to have good reason to go against Houston, and but they've beaten these kind of teams very handily so far. If you find Houston is off to a slow start, maybe we can come back and play a better live bet on Houston because they'll be able to turn it around just the way they play. I mean, they're such a good defense. They got them number 1 in the country in defense. Offense is also very good. So They were slow down tempo, 352, one of the slowest in college basketball. But when you play defense like they do, they're going to end up figuring out what Troy or one of those other teams does. And as the game goes on, I've got more confidence in Houston. And that's usually how I try to play it. I just hope they get off to a slow start, and then we can come back later and bet them at a better number.
Yeah, I usually just love betting them early in the first half, and that's the end of it there. And then good luck trying to come back from that. All right, before we get the best bets here, Trig, I got to ask you, I know Big Daddy wanted to know, and I know you did. I know you did a preview of Brown. You and I have talked about Brown here. They find themselves at home taking on an undefeated Rhode Island team. Rhode Island laying what, 4.5 now? It looks like there were some injury concerns there on Brown early on. But boy, oh boy, they're not getting a whole lot of love in this one. Do you agree with it?
Yeah, and that's going to be my best bet. But I want to say something before we get into that. I want to say something about Cornell Cal, because I don't really think you should bet Cornell tonight. And I should have made a better point about this. The way they play, it's very tough to play the way they play 3 times in 6 days. And that's like, even though you're getting a tremendous number at 10, they play so fast. And something Brian Earl said a couple of years back was like, he's had teams where they weren't physically fit enough to play the way he wanted to play. I'm not saying this team is that, but they did just drop 100 on Army 2 days ago. And now they're going to have to fly across country. I think you're insane if you're laying 9 with Cal, but I want to make it clear that I'm not going to play Cornell for that reason. Now, as far as Brown is concerned, this is my best bet for the show. I did really give this one a lot of consideration. And, I'll just talk about why I don't think Brown, or why I think Brown is decent value, 4.5 or 5. So, yeah, Joe, we did a preview on Brown, and I was all ready to roll this preview out. I thought I made this great case for Brown to win the Ivy. This was one of the first ones we did back in early October, and I was so excited about it. And no later than 24 hours after we filmed the video, we find out that Nana Owasu Anaye is having shoulder surgery, and he's done for the season. And it pretty much, I thought it killed all of Brown's chances. I pretty much had to, I think I made another video or went on a show and backtracked what I was saying, because I thought it was just a death blow for this team, because Brown also lost Kaluanya to St. Louis. So they basically lost their 2 bigs from last year. And really, 3 weeks before the season, it's not like you can go out and replace them. Now, they have a guy named Landon Lewis who played 6 minutes a game last year that has completely stepped up and filled the void left by the Anai injury. He's going for 14.9 points per game, 7.7 boards. I don't think anyone could have seen that coming based on his production last year. And actually, if you watched Brown out of the gate, they lost to Siena on opening night. They lost to Maine. They lost to Holy Cross. So this has been a work in progress. And credit to Mike Martin, who's a fantastic coach, who was a minute away from getting Brown to the NCAA tournament last year. He's just done a great job of sort of remaking this team on the fly. And he asks so much of Keno Lilly, but Keno Lilly just delivers every time. He will be the player of the year in the Ivy. He's just insanely talented. And what Brown has essentially done at this point is they have the ball in his hands, but then the entire offense is also about screening for him when he doesn't have the ball to get open. They're asking him to shoot it 18 times a game, which is really, really difficult and he does it every game. And his shooting splits have not suffered at all, which is incredible. He's going out taking 15 shots a game, and he still hits shots at the percentage that he did last year, basically, which is just a testament to the fact that he is the best player in that league. And Rhode Island's going to have their hands full with him tonight. Now, you mentioned injuries, and that's the main reason I didn't fire this at +5. Alex Lesper has missed the last 2 games for Brown. That's kind of important, although they beat Vermont and Bryant without him, so they've managed to overcome it. The problem is if Lilly has an off game and they're still without Lesper, and some of the shots stop going in, that is a death sentence against Rhode Island because Rhode Island scores. They're very efficient offensively. They can score in high volumes. And that's ultimately the reason that I couldn't put it on my client card because I just don't want to run into the one night where Lily's not shooting it well and Rhode Island just they're still like a top 25 like offensive conversion rate team. I just didn't want to run into that. This is a big rivalry. I was at the Brown-Bryant game last year in this very building where I got this great hoodie that I'm wearing. They will have their best crowd of the year tonight. Can promise you that because Brown-Bryant, Providence, Rhode Island is always the biggest game for the three smaller teams. Providence has bigger games because they play in a bigger conference, but the Brown game, the Bryant game, and the Rhode Island game for those three teams are always a big deal. So you're going to get you can give Brown the full marks for home court here. And again, I still think it's like, if I wasn't worried about Brown having a dud because they just beat Vermont as a dog, they just beat Bryant as a dog, I'd be all over Brown for a best bet. So it'll remain in the strong lean category, but I'm sure I'll be kicking myself come 9 p.m. tonight when they win this one outright.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess you can make the same argument, right, with Rhode Island off a huge win against Providence. So,
yep.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting spot for both these teams here tonight. And yeah, I mean, it's a pretty good card here where I think, Brian, you had mentioned it. We're going to learn a little something about a few teams here tonight at this point to see how they react. We still have some of these these tournaments going on right now at the Jimmy V Classic with some of the big dogs. But when you looked at the card here tonight for a show best bet, where'd you focus your attention on?
One of the smaller games. And today, I just want to point out today's Customer Appreciation Day. Everybody puts up one play for $5. I've got hockey play up there, a 4% hockey play. Actually, 2 hockey plays up today, 3 college basketball plays. Big 5% winner on the Indiana Hoosiers yesterday. Big 5% winner on Boise State against UNLV in college football the other day. So other than a bad Saturday, everything else is going really well for us right now. I'm taking a look at the North Dakota State at Butler game. It's the first game on the schedule. I believe it starts at 3:30 Pacific. The Bison, 7-4 on the season, but they're riding a 4-game winning streak. They're starting to put it together. They've been well tested on the road, and that's one of the things I take a look at here. If you could get some of these smaller conference teams that have already had to play a bunch of games on the road, because somebody's got to go on the road to play all these big schools that don't want to leave their own stadiums in the months of November and December. So you get teams that are more comfortable on the road, and you're getting them at plus money, big underdogs. I like that situation. Lower division game on deck, and so I think the Bulldogs get their full attention here. A win on the road against Butler is a quality victory for the Bison, and it's not a bad Bison team. So I think the line's a little bit high here. Butler enters play at 7-2. They're coming off of a blowout loss to Houston, big blowout loss, 79-51. So a lot of people are going to think that they're going to come back out here and kick some butt here after that big loss, but I still think this is a flat spot for them. After this game, they play Wisconsin, Marquette, and Connecticut. And so far this year, when they've laid 12 points or more, they're 1-3 against the spread. So as opposed to Tennessee and some of these other teams that are really good when they step down in class and beat up all these weak teams, Butler has not done that. And the schedule here just shows to me that it's just a situation where I can't see them getting up to play North Dakota State here. So I'll take the nice points. When this game came out, I think it opened to 13. I think it was head faked all the way up to 14.5. That's what I gave it to clients. So my clients got it at 14.5, and now you're seeing it as the day's going on. It's been back down to 13 and back down to 12.5. So luckily I was able to get the best number for clients on that. But even at this number, I think there's value on the Bison in this one.
All right, looking at the Bison in this one here. And of course, guys, don't forget, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. I'm going to take a look at another team we've talked about on the show here over the last couple of weeks, and that's good old St. Joe's there taking on College of Charleston. This is one of the best backcourts in the country there. You got the kid Eric Reynolds, that's an absolute stud. And I got to tell you, I like the number in this because I think it's a little low at 151 and a half. We know the College of Charleston is averaging about 81, 82 points a game right now. And St. Joe's, I mean, they should have no problem getting into the mid 70s here. I think 80s wins this game, but I don't see either team having an issue being able to get the points or the possessions they need in order to get this thing up and over to the mid 150s, even 160. Over for me with St. Joe's taking on College of Charleston here. And don't forget, $5 customer appreciation day. You heard Bry tell you what he's got locked and loaded here. And for $5, Trig, what are you looking at here tonight for the clients?
Yeah, I'm trying to keep the streak going, Joe. I had 6 5% plays in November, and I hit all of them. So I'm going for a seventh straight tonight. I've also, this will only be my third one of the college basketball season, and the first 2 were winners. So 5% play, college hoops tonight. I'm looking to stay perfect on the season for 5% college hoop plays, and trying to make it 7 5% max bet wins in a row. And it's only $5 because it's Tuesday. So check it out.
Love it, guys. No reason not to take advantage. Brian Leonard told you he is ready to go. Trig continuing to roll here, guys. Take advantage of the $5 customer appreciation day and go get it, man. Huge card in the NHL here tonight. Brian Leonard, locked, loaded, ready to roll. Trig has got you covered here. So head over to WagerTalk.com, and for $5, just our way of saying thank you very much, especially to you guys in the chat room joining us live here. Titan CT, Big Daddy, Eric D is always in the house. Big Munch making an appearance. Good to see you again, Big Munch. We got much more hoops to get to here. Don't forget, NBA tip-off show is coming up here in about 30 minutes, guys. We're going to take a look at these NBA Cup quarterfinal games tonight. Milwaukee taking on Orlando. And then, of course, Oklahoma City at home taking on the Dallas Mavericks. Should be a very interesting night here. We'll talk about those games coming up. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, take advantage of $5 customer appreciation. And we'll see you again tomorrow here on another edition of the College Basketball Tip-Off Show. Good luck with the plays, guys. We'll see you again soon.